In 2026, a single Korean drama took the world by storm. It's called Teach You a Lesson. The show is set around a fictional agency, the Educational Rights Protection Bureau, built to restore the authority teachers have lost. Its inspectors tackle school bullies and abusive parents, and they shut them down in the most satisfying way possible. The moment the drama was released, it shot to #1 worldwide on Netflix. People ate it up. They loved how cathartic it was. It didn't take the teacher's side, nor did it take the student side. It was on the side of whoever got hurt, and that was the whole point. But there was a deeper reason the show gained such traction from the domestic audience. It wasn't just a story. There have been real classrooms out there, just as ugly as what you've seen on screen. And unlike the show, there's never been any Educational Rights Protection Bureau swooping in to make things right. A few years before this drama came out, 2 cases exposed the real-life tragedies happening in South Korea's schools and forced the whole country to pay attention. The first was a bullying case at one of the country's most prestigious high schools, in which a sitting prosecutor stopped at nothing to protect his son, the bully. The second was a tragedy at an elementary school. A 24-year-old teacher who genuinely loved her students ended her own life in the very school where she taught. On the surface, these 2 cases have nothing to do with each other, but buried inside both is the same question the drama asked. Is Korean society actually protecting the people who need it? Our first case began in the spring of 2017. Korea Minjuk Leadership Academy, located in Hwaengsong, Gangwon Province, is a famous elite high school that pulls in top students from all over the country. Students live together in dorms for 3 years and spend a huge amount of time side by side. It's a small school with a small student body, so the staff used to tell the kids to think of each other as brothers. But it was inside that supposed brotherhood that something terrible happened. The victim was a boy we will call Seungmin. By all accounts, Seungmin was the kind of student who greeted everyone with a smile and chatted easily with anyone. Then, at some point, he visibly changed. He talked less and less until eventually he barely said a word to anyone. People around him just figured the schoolwork was getting to him. He wouldn't be the first to buckle under the demands of Korea's education system. But Seungmin was carrying something he couldn't say out loud. His roommate was bullying him. At first, the 2 of them got along fine. But living in the same dorm room led to small arguments, and once the relationship soured, being stuck together day after day only deepened the conflict. And then it tipped over into something one-sided. Relentless harassment. The bully started on Seungmin around May of their first year at school. It was mostly verbal. At mealtimes, when Seungmin would walk into the cafeteria, the bully would unload insults on him in front of everyone. Why is a pig coming to a place where people eat? You should be eating slop. Get out of here before you catch foot and mouth disease. He'd say things you could hardly bring yourself to repeat. He'd cut Seungmin off in front of the younger students too, brushing him aside, telling the pig to shut up and sit still, humiliating him. According to the school's internal investigation report, classmates testified that the bully disrespected and demeaned Seungmin more times than anyone could count. And it didn't stop there. He even threw in political slurs, calling Seungmin a leftist commie. In Korea, that's not just labeling someone as a liberal, but as a traitor to the nation. One expert zeroed in on one insult in particular. The bully would repeatedly talk about Seungmin like he stank. Going after someone's smell, they said, shows zero regard for the other person's dignity. It shows a mindset of someone trying to hurt someone as much as they can. In that sense, it's a fairly evolved kind of cruelty. And this harassment didn't only take place in the form of insults. The bully rallied people against Seungmin and got him voted out of a school club. Right in front of his own classmates, Seungmin was systematically frozen out, and it wrecked his life. Seungmin had entered the school in the top 30% of his class. By the end, his grades had collapsed so badly that he was on academic probation. Worse than the grades, though, was his psychological state. The doctor who examined Seungmin at the time diagnosed him with anxiety and depression, and noted he was even having harmful thoughts, serious enough to require intensive treatment. Seungmin's entire world had been torn apart. But how did the bully see his own behavior? At the school disciplinary hearing, here's what he said. He didn't really remember. But if a friend misspoke, he'd embarrass him a little, and if a friend ate a lot, he'd tease him. It was essentially just messing around. He said he never imagined his friend was hurt by it, since Seungmin laughed it off. But the classmates' accounts told a completely different story. This was nowhere near harmless joking. It was serious, sustained verbal abuse. In March 2018, the school finally convened its bullying review committee. Teachers and parents sat on the panel as members, and the bully's father showed up too. Chung Sun-shin, who was at that time a sitting prosecutor at the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office. He consistently zoned in on one point. His son hadn't been physically violent. If there had been actual hitting, sure, there'd be no excuse, but this was verbal, so context mattered. It was just kids messing around with no bad intent. But the committee wasn't buying it. They found the abuse to be severe, ongoing, and clearly intentional. On top of that, the bully showed no interest in reconciling. So the committee ordered for the bully to be transferred out of the school. On the 9-step disciplinary scale, a forced transfer sits one rung below the most severe punishment, expulsion. And given that Seungmin suffered roughly 10 months of verbal abuse and public humiliation in front of crowds of people, it was hardly an excessive punishment. It seemed this would be the end of it. But Chung Sun-shin wasn't about to accept the committee's decision. From that moment, a long, bitter fight began, with one powerful father using everything at his disposal to prevent his son from facing punishment. It was a fight that would cause the victim even more pain. The second the transfer order was announced, the bully's parents got to work. They filed an appeal with the Gangwon Provincial Office of Education, asking that the transfer be canceled. 2 months later, a student disciplinary review board convened to decide whether to throw it out. And at that hearing, Seungmin had to do something agonizing, relive everything he'd been through out loud all over again. And this is what he told them. Every day was unbearable. The memories of the abuse came back constantly, to the point he could barely breathe. He said he'd almost have preferred to have suffered physical abuse. He said if he had to see his bully again, he might not survive it. He pleaded with them to make the right decision. Meanwhile, the bully, the one whose parents filed the appeal, didn't even show up. 2 months after the bullying was first reported, his side still hadn't offered Seungmin a single genuine apology. And the official apology that the bully had been ordered to write was a joke. It was barely a single page long, a fact that caused even more controversy. Such a short apology felt like it couldn't possibly be a show of genuine remorse. The bully's side brought a lawyer to the hearing too, a former judge who happened to be Chung Sun-shin's classmate from the Judicial Research and Training Institute. He argued that based on the bully's own account, you couldn't really call this violence. Nobody got hit, nobody got robbed. It's just the kind of thing that happens between boys. He even suggested Seungmin could have avoided it if he'd wanted to. The board came back with a stunning decision. Only one parent on the review board thought the transfer order should stand. Everyone else voted to cancel it. So the transfer order was thrown out and the bully got to stay. After that, he reportedly went around telling people he had done nothing wrong, that it had all just been a misunderstanding. With the transfer canceled, the one in the most pain was Seungmin. He couldn't bring himself to show up to school anymore. He said he'd never met anyone with so little conscience in his life. The bully was bragging that he'd hired a lawyer and gotten acquitted. And what's worse is that Seungmin was now gripped by fear. The bully's father was a prosecutor, someone with real power. What if he retaliated by coming after Seungmin? The despair was total. Seungmin started to feel that people like him don't get protected, that reporting abuse changes nothing, and that, in the end, the bully wins. But the fight still wasn't over. This time, Seungmin's parents filed their own appeal asking that the bully be transferred. The Gangwon Bullying Committee reaffirmed the transfer order. And rather than accept it, the boy's parents launched into full-blown legal warfare. Every bit of the bully's father's legal expertise was thrown at the problem. They went to court to file for a stay of execution of the transfer order and an administrative lawsuit. They even filed for an injunction against the school. With all these legal tracks running at once, the one thing that actually mattered kept getting pushed off. The very thing the victim wanted most: separation from the person who'd hurt him. While the legal machinery ground on, the bully and Seungmin had to keep living at the same school. They were no longer sharing a room at this point, but it was a boarding school, so they crossed paths every single day. Seungmin said just sitting in the same class as his bully made his hands shake so badly he couldn't stand it. One expert spelled out how brutal that stretch must have been for him. The longer the case dragged on, the more Seungmin's fear grew. Is the process slow because this guy's father is genuinely that powerful? What if the transfer gets cancelled again? Seungmin had to attend the same school as his bully, steeped in that dread. He was probably living in even more fear than before he ever spoke up. In the end, Seungmin couldn't take it anymore, and he left the school. The victim, not the bully, was the one forced out. Meanwhile, the bully stayed, kept attending school club activities, kept sitting for exams, kept living an ordinary school life. And Chung Sun-shin's legal campaign rolled on. When a court ruled the transfer order was justified, he immediately appealed to the High Court and filed for another stay of execution. When the High Court also ruled that the transfer order was justified, he took it all the way to the Supreme Court. From start to finish, getting the bully to actually transfer took about 11 months. As one expert pointed out, no other bullying case has a record like this. This is the only instance that ever went to the Supreme Court. But there was an extra layer of irony buried in all of it. The whole time this was unfolding, Chung Sun-shin was the prosecutor's office's human rights supervisor. A man whose job was to protect other people's human rights looked the other way while his own son trampled on the rights of a classmate. It is known that even after all that, the bully went on to enroll at Seoul National University, Korea's top university. The victim, meanwhile, was forced to leave school, later earned his diploma through the GED, and according to reports, eventually entered university as well. Since then, neither his current life nor Chung Sun-shin's son's has been publicly confirmed. But it's not just students who suffer here. Sometimes the victims are the teachers. Take our second case. In the summer of 2023, hundreds of funeral wreaths sent from all over the country were lined up in front of an elementary school in Seoul. An endless procession of mourners in black followed. People were grieving in stunned disbelief for one person, a 24-year-old teacher who we will call Miss Park, had taken her own life inside this very school. The place where she died was the school where she taught. Her colleagues couldn't hold back their tears. She was a young teacher who'd barely started her career. Someone who dreamed of becoming a teacher ever since she was a child. What had pushed her to this? Everyone had the same question. The professors who trained her at the education college mourned her death and demanded a full investigation. The news landed especially hard on her academic advisor, who'd watched her closely for 4 straight years. He remembered her as an unforgettable student, always in the front row, hanging on every word of each lecture. He said she had warm eyes and was always smiling. He could picture her looking at each one of her kids with those same eyes as she taught. After she got her first posting, Ms. Park even enrolled in graduate school to keep learning. She wanted to find even more engaging ways to teach children. That's how strong her sense of calling was. But a weight she couldn't carry was being piled onto her. The first grade class Ms. Park was assigned had a number of kids who were hard to manage. One student would hit and curse at classmates, sparking conflicts as often as 5 times a day. Another would scream and act out. For a 24-year-old teacher just starting her career, the situation was overwhelming. But Ms. Park took care of those kids more devotedly than anyone. To keep the class from falling apart, she filled her class log with detailed notes on what needed to be done. And there was more. She personally cleaned out and decorated a small storage room next to the classroom, turning it into a special place. She called it the feelings room. When a kid couldn't regulate their emotions, she'd sit with them there, talk it through, and help them calm down. It was a space built out of a wish for her students to be happy. She even wrote herself a manual for how to treat them. Welcome each child, show them you care, never give up on them. That's how deeply she loved her students. But despite all of it, the conflicts in the classroom kept coming, and the blame fell entirely on her. To make it worse, the parents' complaints never stopped. In a class with fewer than 30 students, 10 parents came to Ms. Bach demanding she watch out for their child, who they claimed was struggling. Each time she had to repeat that she was sorry for not doing better. She was forced to apologize over and over for things she hadn't done wrong. And then one incident broke her for good. It was 5 days before her death. There was a small scuffle between students, and one child ended up with a cut on his forehead. Ms. Bach spent the entire afternoon mediating, going back and forth with both sets of parents, and it was rough. One parent reportedly blew up at her, demanding to know how she couldn't have seen something that happened during class. That night, after 9 p.m., one parent sent a long text to Ms. Park's personal cell phone, a complaint issued point by point. The messages kept coming the next day, in the middle of class. Ms. Park told a colleague she was rattled and somewhat creeped out that this parent kept calling her personal number over and over again. The only advice the school gave her was to change her phone number. The school never once helped carry the weight she was under. Around that time, Ms. Bach sent her own mother a message, just one line that said, "I'm having such a hard time." And throughout the records she left behind, you can see exactly how the spirit of a young teacher slowly faded away. Every morning she came to school, she wrote, her chest felt tight with dread. Standing in front of kids she couldn't control, she found herself feeling more and more powerless. She was constantly anxious about when the next complaint would come in. And then one day, with everything still wearing away at her, Miss Park wrote her class log as usual, finished all her work, and took a path there's no coming back from. She took her own life in the feelings room, the very space she'd created to support her students. The tragedy laid bare, in raw terms, the crisis Korea's schools were facing. According to one survey, over 99% of elementary teachers said they'd experienced some violation of their authority, such as students disrupting the class or abusive parent complaints. What Ms. Park went through wasn't unusual at all. Countless teachers are experiencing the same pain. Now, this may seem on the surface like two cases that are completely unrelated. In one, a father with power used legal tactics to shield his son, the bully. The victim, defeated, was the one who ended up leaving the school. In the other, a teacher who loved her students more than anything, died alone after finding herself buried under abusive complaints from parents. Both were tragedies in which protection was not provided to the people who needed it most. That's exactly why so many people went wild for Teach You a Lesson. Vulnerable people who needed protection got what they needed, courtesy of the drama's Educational Rights Protection Bureau. But the bigger that catharsis is, the more bitter the aftertaste, because we all know it only works in a TV show. In real life, there is no Educational Rights Protection Bureau to protect the people who need it. These cases raised a heavy question in Korean society. When those with power are able to dodge accountability, is it only the powerless who end up carrying all the pain? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and that is all for today. Thanks for watching.